Good afternoon, and welcome to March's Sage 200 Lunch and Learn. My name is David Armstrong. I'm one of the partner success managers here at Sage, and I'm also joined by my colleague David Stubbings, who's going to be leading this session. He's the learning specialist for Sage 200, and he's be going through the fixed assets module, which was already requested in a prior session, so we believe we'll host that for you guys today. Now, the session should last around 30 minutes, so we should be able to give you some time back. It'll then be followed by a Q&A, so if you do have any questions throughout the session, please drop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and David will answer them once the presentation is ended. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over to yourself, David, to run through the session.
Thank you very much. What I'll do is just quickly share my screen. So, as Dave mentioned, this session is going to be on fixed assets. So what I'll do is just a very brief overview of the fixed asset module, as well as a demonstration as well. The agenda for this particular session is providing that overview, the process of buying a fixed asset, the process of creating a fixed asset record, the process of depreciating a fixed asset, disposing of a fixed asset at the end of its life, and if the business wants to be able to recoup some of the funds from that fixed asset, they may choose to sell it. So I'll also demonstrate selling a fixed asset once it's been disposed. Just before we go on to any questions at the end, I'll do a shameless plug for the certification training that's on the horizon, just so that if anybody wanted to pass that information on to any colleagues, you know the dates. Just a quick slide on what a fixed asset is. So it's a thing, it's either physical or intangible, which helps a business function, but it's not consumed during its normal process of buying, manufacturing, or selling. So it's something. If you think of these images that we've got here, we've got the chair, the desk, the building itself that the people work in. Those would be considered fixed assets. So let me just change things up a little bit. So like I said, I'm going to show you the process of sort of end to end of fixed assets. We'll start by buying, say for instance, the chair that I'm sat in at the moment. It had to be bought by Sage, so therefore let's demonstrate the process of buying a chair. You'd have to post a transaction, and we'll do it as a nominal VATable payment transaction. Let's imagine I was paying by check, and I knew the check number. The important thing to bear in mind is when you're buying the fixed asset, you'll be logging the cost of the item against the balance sheet nominal code, alongside a nominal code that will be used for depreciation later. So in my case, if I'm going to be buying a chair, it's going to be going against 06100, which should give me the office equipment costs nominal code. You can see that my narrative is carried down as you would expect. And let's imagine that the goods value of the chair that I'm sat in is £200. And so therefore, it's just a normal nominal payment transaction. So that simply records the fact that I've bought the asset. Then we can go through the process of creating a fixed asset. You'll notice that you've got an initial value field. This allows you to be able to record the initial value when the fixed asset was originally purchased. So we've recorded the fact that it was £200, and we can say what date we acquired. So on my transaction, I made the mistake of actually putting the transaction date as at today's date. What I intended to do was acquire the fixed asset at the beginning of this year. So we'll put it down as the 2nd of the 1st, 2026. Now, if a fixed asset is being transferred across from a previous system, you could record a last depreciated date where the fixed asset had been depreciated in another system. Now, you could also specify who's responsible for a fixed asset. This is a note field that just allows the person who uses Sage 200 to keep a track of people who are responsible, as well as where the fixed asset might live. If we saved the fixed asset at this point in time, we can see that it appears in the list. At this point in time, it doesn't have any of the information against the fixed asset record, which would allow us to be able to do any of the process of depreciating the fixed asset. So effectively, if I were to try doing a depreciation at this point in time, the chair 2 would simply not appear in the list of assets that could be depreciated. Naturally, we can continue to make amendments to the fixed asset record, and therefore we could specify the depreciation method. Now, before I detail the depreciation method on this particular record, I've got a slide to share. There are two types of depreciation that are available within Sage 200. There is the straight line depreciation, as you can see on this graph, where it depreciates by the set amount every single period that the fixed asset is being depreciated. The other line, that's the percentage or reducing balance depreciation method. That's where a certain percentage is removed from the value of the fixed asset at each point of depreciation. So on the one hand, with the straight line, you'd have effectively your starting point. You decide on an ending point for the value of the fixed asset. The system then calculates what equal amount would be removed each and every time, and therefore you end up with over the life of the fixed asset, a steady decline in the value. You'll also, with the reducing, it'll never effectively reduce the value to zero under a reducing balance depreciation method. So it's up to the user of Sage 200 to decide when they're actually going to dispose of the fixed asset and therefore remove the value of that fixed asset. I'll shift back. So in this case, I'm going to be doing we'll just do a percentage based, so reducing. And that's, so when it says period reducing balance, what that means is that the period in question is each month. Each time somebody's going to be doing their month-end routine, they'll go through the processes that they would normally do as part of month-end, and one of those tasks will be to depreciate their fixed assets. You'll notice that there is another option there, which is the annual reducing balance. In other words, a fixed asset would reduce once per year. And so therefore, it's just something to be aware of, that there are these two different models, but they broadly equate to the same thing. This one, 12 periods. This one, just one reduction per year. You can specify the percentage that you actually wanted to reduce each and every time. And if we've bought a fixed asset and effectively we've not transferred the value across from a previous system, we would specify the net book value as being the same as the initial value. The net book value is just the value of the fixed asset as now, effectively the point at which we acquired the fixed asset. So we can specify the nominal, so for the balance sheet. And we can specify the profit and loss nominal code. That's effectively where the value is going to go to show that the business has lost value. Not that one. There we go. Like I say, if you go through the process of creating or adding an analysis code on the fly on one fixed asset, it will be available on other fixed asset records that you create at a later date. So, say for sake of argument, I wanted to be able to include another analysis code, perhaps the function within the business that is responsible for the item, I could do so. As you can see, I now have a value against the fixed asset that I've created. And so this brings me on to the point where I can now start doing depreciation. Just to mention that Sage 200 does not provide the opportunity to be able to appreciate fixed assets. That's just something which is simply not available within Sage 200. If a business needs to record some sort of, say, annual appreciation against fixed assets, then they would need to discuss that with their accountant. Their accountant would give them the necessary information about postings to make into their accounts to be able to record an appreciating fixed asset. They simply wouldn't have or wouldn't use the depreciation option within Sage 200 in that situation. So this brings us on to depreciating fixed assets. As you can see, you can pick and choose which date you wanted to do a depreciation for. And you'll notice that I've got some other fixed assets which have already been created within the list, and so therefore we can just show how depreciation works. We've got another chair that's been created, and you'll also notice that the method of depreciation that I've used for, say, office equipment is consistent between all of the different items of office equipment, and that the vehicles take on a period straight line depreciation instead. That's on purpose. Ultimately, it's up to the accountant to give the advice to the user as to which depreciation methods to use. But generally, as far as I understand it, the advice would be that depending on the fixed asset class, in other words, whether it's a vehicle or office equipment, all of the same items within the same class would have the same depreciation method. So the moment I tick something to be depreciated, you can see that the system identifies the value that is going to be depreciated on this occasion. I'll go ahead and depreciate that chair 1. You'll see that we get an option for what date we want to record against the transaction that's going to be posted against the system to record the depreciation. This is not technically going to do anything. If I were to change that to, say, the end of January, I'll leave it as is, and we'll see the transaction that gets posted, and you'll see what I mean. The moment you've depreciated a fixed asset, it's removed from the list, and so therefore there's not the risk of depreciating a particular fixed asset more than once within a particular period. If we go and have a quick look at the transaction that's been posted, there should be the depreciation that's taken place. If we go back to the fixed asset record, we can then just see what happens with further depreciation. So if we went back to, say, February, so period 2, you'll notice that the chair that I depreciated in period 1 has now reappeared. And so let's imagine we wanted to depreciate both chairs as at period 2. What the system will do is it's going to be recording the depreciation, the periodic depreciation for both chairs. Period 1 for one of the chairs has already been done, and the second chair, both periods still are to be depreciated. So let's see what happens. If we refresh the list, so we should see chair 1. That was the initial depreciation of chair 1, and then a subsequent depreciation for chair 1, this time in February, and chair 2 in both January and February. So as you can see, regardless of whether or not I specified a particular date for the depreciation transactions to take place, the system has simply used the end of the period instead. If we head back, just to go back to the difference between the fixed assets which were on a reducing depreciation and fixed assets which are on a straight line, I'll just open up one of the fixed assets which is on a straight line depreciation, which is the transit van. you'll notice that we can select a straight line, and we get some different fields that need to be filled in. So the different fields really just allow us to be able to specify what residual value, in other words, what the end value of the vehicle is going to be. Let's say we were going down to £5,000. We can give it the lifespan of the asset. So let's say, for sake of argument, it's going to be 60 periods, in other words, 5 years. And we can specify some details. So again, it's up to the user of Sage 200 to know their nominal structure and to decide which nominals to use, given the advice of their accountant. You'll notice that the additional analysis code that I created on the fly is available within this record as well. And you'll also notice, oops, let me just refresh. Oops, sorry. I need to give it a net book value. So we'll give it a net book value of 10,000. Let's say that was the amount that it was transferred across to this system. So now that it's got a value, it appears and it's available to be depreciated. So again, the moment you've depreciated your fixed assets and there's no further depreciation that is available, you'd effectively just you can't effectively do the same thing more than once. So let's imagine we get to the point where a fixed asset has reached the end of its life. A business will need to actually do postings to be able to show that there's nothing left to do within the fixed asset module, and that process is called disposal. So to dispose of a fixed asset, you'd simply pick the fixed asset that you're looking to get rid of and hit dispose. It asks the question, what date do you want to dispose? I think this is more relevant in this case, but we'll select the date. And just in the same way with the depreciation, if you've disposed of a fixed asset, you can't then accidentally select it again and have the system post additional transactions for the same item. We'll just go and have a quick look at the transactions that were posted in the background. There we have the disposal, and that's simply going to have used the same nominal codes that we were for depreciation. Ultimately, the same sort of nominal code is used every time. If the business wants to be able to recoup some of the value from an item that's being disposed, they might seek to actually sell it second-hand. They can just simply record a bank receipt transaction, this time against the nominal code which recorded the original cost of the fixed asset, and that way they can recoup the value as cash into the bank. So the process, as you've seen it, is the end-to-end process of dealing with fixed assets. I just want to do a bit of a shameless plug for for the upcoming certification training that's available. I've just popped the dates on the screen. So if you know of anybody who may benefit from certification, and they're looking to be able to brush up on their skills before taking the certification exams, these are the dates that I have available at present.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that, David. There are some actual questions that I've just dropped into the to the chat. If you want to go through them, there's one from Monique and one from Tom.
Are there any plans to add functionality to this module? There's a lot of basic accounting functionality that's missing. In terms of plans for future developments within the Sage 200 program, the place to look is the roadmap. I don't think there are any specific roadmap plans at present which relate to the fixed asset module. And Tom asked, is there any way to name the extra analysis codes? No, there isn't. The analysis codes, those additional analysis codes are just analysis codes 1, 2, and 3. Interestingly, they're also not related to any of the other analysis codes that exist within the rest of Sage 200. Those are specific to the fixed asset module.
Just quickly going back to Monique's question, what we'll do is we'll take that away and we'll link them with the product marketing team and the product team just to discuss if there is any plans that they're aware of, and we'll be able to update you on the back of the conversation with them also. There's another question that's dropped in the Q&A from Graham by the looks of it, David.
So you mentioned that you can select a period to do a depreciation, say period 3. Will it depreciate 1 and 2 if not already done? Yes, it does. It's a good question. Yes, what it will do is it will depreciate all of the periods that haven't been processed up to the point that you're doing your depreciation, your final period that you're depreciating.
Right, okay. Well, if you do have any questions on the back of this, just drop them over to myself or to David, and we'll be able to point in the right direction onto the questions that you've asked. As David's mentioned, this session has been recorded, so it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And also, as well as that, we will be sending a feedback form on the back of this, just due to that this session was requested by our partners, and we'll want to do more of these sessions each month going forward to give you as much insights as possible on Sage 200. So just to end the session, I'd like to thank David for running through that. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank every single one of you for your attendance today. We really appreciate it, and we'll speak to you all soon.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye-bye.